So first of all, thank you to the program organizers, Espen, Øystein, Tor Inge, and Peran for their amazing organizational skills, which vastly outstrip my own. To the NAL, and of course to Jeffrey, Christina, and Craig for joining us today. So this is the last session, communication. And I guess it's always apt to talk about communication, I guess, within an architecture context. In a very practical sense, communication is key to, I guess, our practice. Architecture projects kind of are always a negotiation between multiple interests. Clients, neighbors, municipalities, and even of abstract things like values, of different understandings of even what is a successful project. It's about selling an idea. It's about translating ideals and how that is kind of projected onto a client. It's also about essentializing complex ideas into easily understandable and perhaps press-ready kind of ideas. So communication is central, but this is well understood, I guess. So today what we can talk about, and this is what I guess we can challenge our speakers as well, is to talk about communication in an expanded field of architecture practices, particularly in taking stock of how technological changes in the way we communicate have changed or given new focus to the profession. So we live in a world of a highly communicative world. I mean, this morning, Øystein sitting right there was twittering about everything that was happening, the lighting, and who's starting getting on stage. But beyond monographs, books, and exhibitions, the media that we've been used to communicating through, we're now enriched with blogs and websites, TV programs, and Twitter, of course. With the world being so mediated, where everyone is in a perpetual kind of dialogue on social media, in social medias, everyone is becoming also a kind of an opinion maker, placing cultural practitioners like ourselves in maybe a disadvantaged or endangered position. People are putting architecture videos on YouTube, where I guess we're competing with Beyonce videos and cats being tickled and stuff like that. So what do we make of this? Particularly kind of in light of the keynote speech this morning by Knut Olaf Olmos about how architects, and he was saying in this country perhaps, are overly polite in managing how they, inject themselves into society. And this is, of course, compounded by the fact that the general public sees architecture as, much more casually than they would other arts. People have an opinion about movies, about films, their favorite music, about books even, but you ask your average person and they might not have reflected in the same way about architecture. So to this condition of hyperconnectedness that Daniel in an earlier session spoke about, reminds me of just yesterday there was another conference where Olafur Eliasson was talking about this, and he finds this kind of over communication that we're living in, this condition, to be one that's numbing of the sensorium. We stop seeing, we stop hearing, we stop feeling, and so on. So the question to all of us is, could we operate fully, engagedly, and sensitively in this condition? How can we make use of this new situation? And this is something perhaps that Christina can touch upon in her presentation. Her practice makes use of software for communicating in different places of different stakeholders. Further, as we saw with the first panel today, there's a growing interest professionally as well as academically in research as a mode of spatial practice. So how do we continue to communicate architecture to students, to architecture students, for people 18, 19 entering architecture school who have a dream of being Frank Gehry and designing the next Bilbao? How do we tell them that they're going to be learning about designing workflows and so on? So this is maybe something that Jeffrey can talk about as well, touch upon as his experience as a professor at Columbia University and as an editor of Volume magazine. and as an architectural designer. And for Craig, whose firm Snøhetta needs no introduction in this country, or any other for that matter, I would like to hear about how he communicates a brand identity for the firm, particularly in a very kind of complex site like Ground Zero. So I guess without further ado, Craig?